Darth, Kermit here with a best practices guide on how to beat the challenge tier pit raid. I've collected these practices from many different guilds and I will break them down into 3 sections: planning, execution, and phase-specific best practices. In each, I will cover best practices for guild leaders and best practices for guild members. Even though I'm breaking it down that way, I highly recommend that everyone watch the whole video. The easiest way to beat this raid is for all participants to be on the same page. What this video will not cover are all the specific teams for each phase because that list is changing and will continue to change very rapidly. But I do have another video that covers all the current best teams, and I will make new videos on it as things change. Card at the top. So first, a quick overview of this raid. Nominally and visually, it's just a higher tier difficulty of the original pit raid. However, the challenge tier of the pit requires completely different teams and strategies to win, so it's probably best to just think of it as the newest raid in Galaxy of Heroes. It is also currently the only place to get some of the materials necessary for Relic Tier 8. Now, before I dive into all the details, let me talk about the elephant in the room. What is the challenge exactly? Well, it's not farming the right teams. Most players who are at least at the Relic stage of the game will already have teams that can at least do okay in this raid. And the challenge isn't doing enough damage to the boss. There are already teams doing 50% of a single phase. The challenge for this raid is coordination. Without coordination among guild members, this raid is currently impossible. This is because of a new raid mechanic called Pit Fighter 2, specifically this line. For every 20% of its health lost, this unit gains 75% offense and speed stacking. What this means is that in each phase, as the boss's health gets lower, it gets significantly harder to beat. By the time the boss's health is under 20%, it is practically impossible for any current team to do any damage at all to the boss. So in order to beat each phase, every player must enter the raid while the boss is still at 100% health before any damage has been posted. Then, all the players need to cumulatively do 100% damage to the boss before anyone posts damage. Doing this takes significant coordination among guildmates. If that didn't make sense to you, don't worry, I'll go into detail on posting during the execution section of the video. But first, let's go over planning. This is all about preparing as a guild for the challenge pit with the goal of making sure that you will have enough players at the same time with enough raid teams that can do enough damage to complete each phase of the raid. Best practices for guild leaders. Number 1. Choose when you will do each phase. Some guilds do phases 1 through 3 on day 1 and phase 4 on day 2. Well-organized guilds knock the whole thing out in 1 to 2 hours on day 1. And some guilds even schedule each phase at different times over the 48-hour window. Figure out which of these options is best for your guild. Make sure to keep in mind that depending on how much practice they've had, many players may need multiple tries to get their damage high enough. Number 2. Account for at least 110% damage for each phase. This requires knowing which players are available at the time you've scheduled, what teams they have, how much damage those teams should be able to do at a minimum, and which teams to use in which phases. Some guilds use sign-up sheets. Some guilds simply assign their members and teams to each phase. Some track all this in Discord. Some track it by hand on paper, and some track it in a spreadsheet. I'm one of the latter, and I've created a helpful spreadsheet to track it all, which you can find on my Discord channel, link in the description. Number 3. Create a raid damage reporting channel in Discord or in-game for participants to report what damage they will be holding until told to post. This channel should be used for reporting currently held damage and keeping a tally of total held damage. Once a member has reported a percentage in this channel, they should hold that run until told to post. Any retries should be done prior to this, no retries after reporting. Make sure to let your members know how you want them to report to you, i.e. name followed by percentage damage done, or name followed by percent left on the boss, etc., etc. Number 4. Educate your guild. Every participant needs to be on the same page to succeed at this raid. Even 1 or 2 members posting damage early or not doing what they're supposed to be doing can completely ruin the raid and make it unwinnable. Talk to your guild on Discord, through in-game chat, make them watch this video, whatever it takes to get them on the same page. Best practices for guild members. Number 1. Know the raid teams, which ones you have, how to mod them, and how to use them. Watch video guides, read guides on Reddit or Discord, ask your guildmates. You can find various resources on my Discord or the Planet Coruscant Discord, links in the description. Number 2. Identify your best team for each phase. Keep in mind that except for Zerging Phase 4, you will only be able to use one team in each phase. Number 3. Identify your Zerg teams. Be prepared to use them all at the end of Phase 4. Number 4. Set up mod profiles for your team so you can get them ready to go quickly. Alternatively, use Grand Ivory and the patron features of Hotbot to manage your mod profiles. Links in the description. Proper modding can easily double your damage in this raid. Number 5. Let your guild leaders know when you can participate and which teams you have. Message them on Discord or in-game. Sign up on the sign-up sheet if your guild uses one. Number 6. Find out how your guild leaders want you to report damage. Number 7. If possible, get access to 2 devices at raid time. One device for communicating with your guild and another device to play the game on. Eventually, raid night comes along and it's time to execute. Here are the best practices that help make sure you are able to actually complete the raid. Some of these are complicated and I will be going into much more detail about them. For guild leaders. Number 1. Roll call. Double check that you have enough players with enough potential damage to complete each phase and that they showed up for the raid. Use Discord or in-game chat to confirm presence and participation and note it on whatever you use for planning. Try to make sure you have at least 110% of projected damage for the phase in case anything goes wrong. If you find that you are short for some reason, try to find other available players, and if none are available, try to reschedule. This is not a raid where you can leave the boss at 15% and let someone else finish it off later. If you leave the boss at 15%, you will not finish the raid. Number 2. Once you have confirmed you have enough players present to complete the phase or phases you will be attempting, let your members know to go ahead and enter the raid with their assigned teams and remind them to use airplane mode. Remind them gently or possibly with many expletives, whatever works for your guild. Airplane mode is necessary for this raid. One oops moment can ruin the whole thing for everyone. Number 3. Keep a running tally of reported damage as your members report in. Keep this tally in the reporting channel or your tracking spreadsheet or on a scrap of paper. Whatever works for your guild. Number 4. Once your tally hits 110%, tell all but 1 or 2 of them to go ahead and post their damage. Then wait to confirm that the phase is clear. If it's not cleared, tell the last 1 or 2 to post their damage, otherwise tell them to withdraw. Then move on to the next phase and repeat the process. For guild members. Number 1. Show up. This raid can only be completed as a group. If you tell your guild that you're going to participate, then they will be counting on you to follow through. Every one of them will be setting aside some of their time to accomplish this task as a group, and if you don't show up, you will be wasting all of their time. Your guild can't do this without you. Number 2, and this is a long one, use airplane mode. I originally thought to make this best practices numbers 1 through 10, because I really can't stress enough how important this is. You should be using airplane mode for this raid, for TW, and for GAC. Here's how and why airplane mode works and why you should be using it. In many game modes, primarily raids, GAC, and TW, damage, turn meter, and ability cooldown status is persistent. So when you lose a TW or GAC battle, whatever damage you did to the other team will stay, along with the turn meter status and ability cooldown status as they were at the moment you lost the battle. When the next team enters the battle, they will have to deal with the opposing team as they were at the moment you lost. This can put yourself or your guildmate at a massive disadvantage against, say, a Darth Revan starting at 50% turn meter. However, there is a way to prevent this, the mystical airplane mode. With a single button, you can prevent disaster. You see, the game only reports the final status at the moment the battle ends. So if your phone or tablet is not connected to the internet when this happens, then the damage, turn meter, and ability status is never reported to the game server. This is intentional. This is how the game is supposed to work. All you have to do is make sure your device is not connected to the internet while you battle, and then if you lose, you just force quit the game. In GAC and TW, this will count as a failed attempt, and the team you used will no longer be available, but you or your guildmate won't have to face that team with a bunch of preloaded turn meter. Now for raids, this works a bit differently. Only damage is persistent across your entire guild. Ability usage is only persistent for each participant individually, and turn meter isn't persistent at all. So if you go in and do 1 million damage to the Rancor, then when you turn off airplane mode and post that damage to the server, the Rancor will show up to your entire guild as having 97.25% health left. And when you jump in to hit the Rancor with another team, the Rancor won't have any extra turn meter, but any of its abilities that were on cooldown at the end of your previous run will now be on cooldown at the beginning of this run. Keep this in mind, we'll be taking advantage of it in the Phase 2 best practices. However, while its abilities may be on cooldown for you, they will be completely fresh for your guildmates. Now for the challenge pit, keeping all this in mind is particularly important because the lower the boss's health, the harder he is to beat. Remember, at 80%, 60%, 40%, and 20% health, the boss's damage and speed will ramp by 75% stacking. So a team that could normally do 24% when starting with a boss at 100% health might only be able to do 15% when starting from a boss with 90% health remaining. That 9% can be the difference in being able to finish the raid, so use airplane mode. Note that when you use airplane mode in a raid and force quit, your team will still be available. In this way, you can try as many times as you want with the same team till you get a score that you're happy with. Number 3. Now that you know all about airplane mode, use it. Number 4. Do not post your damage until your guild leaders have told you to post your damage. To hold your damage, just pause when the battle is almost over, i.e. the boss hits in rage or all your characters are about to die. Then turn airplane mode off and wait for the order to post. Number 5. When you are holding your damage, report your damage percentage. Your guild leaders have given you a way to tell them how much damage you are holding. Use it. Once you have reported, do not restart the battle. If your game crashes after you have reported, tell your guild leaders as soon as possible and remind them of the percentage that you had reported. Number 6. When you get the order to post, resume the game and finish the battle, then wait for the next phase. So here's some phase-specific best practices. These are mostly of concern to guild leaders, but everyone should be aware of them. Here's a few for all phases. Number 1. Keep in mind that the bosses gain 15% turn meter each time they take damage. This includes every instance of damage, such as dots, courage, and thermal detonators. Number 2. Mod for health over protection. The Rancor drastically reduces max protection. Number 3. There are a few Zerg mode teams, namely CLS, Malik, Grievous, and a separatist lead Django. If things go wrong and you end up just a few percent short of completing a phase, these teams can be counted on for a few tenths of a percent, even when the boss is under 20%. So save these teams in case this happens or for the end of Phase 4. Phase 1 best practices. Number 1, if you trust your guild, give them time before the scheduled raid start time to practice on Phase 1. If you don't trust them not to post damage early, then make sure the raid is locked right up to start time. Number 2, the captain inflicts deathmark and healing immunity. Make sure to cleanse sooner rather than later. Phase 2. Number 1, according to the event description, the Rancor is supposed to start with Devour on cooldown. However, currently this is not the case at the beginning of Phase 2, so you need to pick a useless character, thank you Rose Tico, to sacrifice to the Rancor. Send this character into the raid by themselves. They will be devoured by the Rancor, and the cooldown of Devour will be reset so that your next team won't have someone eaten right away. Number 2. In this phase, the Rancor has plus 125% armor while not debuffed, so you need to make sure you have a way to debuff it. Phase 3. Number 1. Devour does start on cooldown for this phase, so you do not have to worry about a sacrifice. Number 2. In this phase, the Rancor takes 75% less damage from debuffed characters, so make sure you have a way to cleanse your damage dealers. Phase 4. Number 1. For this phase, it may be best to send in a few lower damage teams to get the boss to about 85% health before having everyone commit all of their best teams. Number 2. Save Malik, Grievous, and Django Zerg teams for the end of this phase. They will get nearly the same damage no matter when they go during this phase. This has been quite a long video. I'll try to keep any updates much shorter, but I wanted to get a comprehensive video out there for guilds to use. Keep an eye on my YouTube channel or Discord server for up-to-date best teams videos. And if you like my videos and find them helpful, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below, hit that notification bell, and support me on Patreon if you think I deserve it. Till next time.
I find your lack of rainbow connection disturbing.